Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the Kevin Michael Grace Show. Well, we've been told that the old world is over. It's not coming back, that there is going to be a new normal. What does that mean? Well, it could mean that the era of invade the world, invite the world is over. According to Associated Press, President Donald Trump announced what he described as a temporary suspension of immigration into the United States on Tuesday. He said the executive order he plans to sign as soon as Wednesday would apply only to those seeking permanent residency and not temporary workers. Trump said he would be placing a 60-day pause on the issuance of green cards in an effort to limit competition for jobs in the U.S. economy wrecked by the coronavirus. No, it wasn't wrecked by the coronavirus. It was wrecked by the coronavirus panic, but never mind that. Trump said there would be certain exemptions included in the order, which staff were still crafting Tuesday. An administration official familiar with the plans has said earlier the order would be focused on preventing people from winning permission to live and work in the U.S. That would include those seeking employment-based green cards and relatives of green card holders who are not citizens. Americans who wish to bring immediate family to the country would still be able to do so, according to the official who spoke on condition of anonymity. About 1 million people were granted green cards last year. While a hard stop on immigration would normally affect millions of people, much of the immigration system is already ground to a halt because of the pandemic. Almost all visa processing by the State Department has been suspended for weeks. Travel to the U.S. has been restricted from much of the globe. And Trump has used the virus to effectively end asylum at U.S. borders, turning away children who arrive by themselves and putting a hold on refugee resettlement, something Congress, the courts, and international law hadn't previously allowed. Criticism of Trump's new announcement was swift, especially his timing during the pandemic. Ali Noorani, president of the National Immigration Forum, a fine American name there, noted that thousands of foreign-born healthcare workers are currently treating people with COVID-19 and working in critical sectors of the economy. Yes, that is a meme that is floating around, that you must worship immigrants because they are the doctors and the healthcare workers. So in effect, the immigrants take jobs which should have gone to Americans and then demand to be praised for it. Andrea Flores of the American Civil Liberties Union said Trump seemed more interested in fanning anti-immigrant flames than in saving lives. But Jessica Vaughn, Director of Policy Studies at the Center for Immigration Studies, which favors lower rates of immigration, said that eliminating millions of work permits and visas would instantaneously create new jobs for Americans and other legal workers, even though most businesses are shuttered because of social distancing dictates and stay-at-home orders. Yeah, if you look at the figures that Ed Rubenstein puts in VDARE, for years and years and years, until just a short while ago, all of the new jobs created in the United States were going to immigrants. Given that there's over 19 million Americans who stopped looking for work before the coronavirus panic, the United States doesn't need immigrants. Oh, I don't know, maybe 10,000 a year for very specialized positions. That's about it. In fact, none of the Western countries need immigrants. This is driven for political reasons and economic reasons. Big business wants lower wages, and big government, well, the left wants people who are going to vote for the Democratic Party, for the Liberal Party in Canada, for the Labour Party in Britain, etc., etc. Republican Representative Matt Gaetz, who met with Trump at the White House Tuesday, said the president was looking at various carve-outs for people like agricultural workers, medical professionals, and people with family in the United States. There was a story out of Britain that, they don't want crops rotting in the fields, and 30,000 Britons had applied for jobs picking fruit, but the consortium in charge of this said, no, we can't hire Britons because these apple pickers, the fruit pickers, they need specialized skills, so they have to come from Poland. I mean, it's really clear when you see things like that, that they just don't want to hire the citizens of their own countries. because they'd have to pay them more, and I suppose they'd have to treat them better. And the capitalists don't want that. So Trump immigration ban to last up to 90 days, targeting those seeking permanent U.S. residency. Yeah. The United States going to get rid of the green card lottery is absolutely absurd. According to Breitbart, President Donald Trump's decision to suspend immigration will protect wages for Americans. Kayleigh McEnany says that Trump is committed to protecting the health and economic well-being of American citizens as we face unprecedented times. As Trump has said, decades of record immigration have produced lower wages and higher unemployment for our citizens, especially for African American and Latino workers. At a time when Americans are looking to get back to work, the action is necessary. The statement comes as pro-migration business lobbies, i.e. traitors, and progressives complain that Trump's suspension is xenophobic or racist. Well, given that we were told back in January that talking about a China virus or a Wuhan virus, suspending people coming from China was xenophobic and racist, I really don't think that those words have much power anymore. One result of the new normal that I spoke of, that everyone's speaking of, I think is that immigration is going to be associated with China. It's going to be associated with biological terrorism, you know, of lying, of cover-ups, etc. And I want to see the other side. I want to see the other side continue to argue for high immigration rates in countries where 30% of the people are out of work. The last time America had a Great Depression, immigration had largely been stopped. That was in 1924, and the Depression was a few years later. For decades, the flood of legal and illegal immigrants has been used to drown blue-collar wages in construction, trucking, retail, the food industry, and manufacturing. This economic trend has pushed millions of blue-collar voters, including many blacks and Latinos, to back Trump in 2016. In response, Trump promised a policy of hire American during his 2017 inauguration speech. Blue-collar wages rose rapidly in 2018 and 2019, partly because Trump's border policy slowed and then stopped the inflow of blue-collar migrants from South America. You know, there's another aspect to this, which is as important as the economic aspect, and we know that immigration does not help the economy. Immigration is a huge burden on both Americans and Canadians because on the whole, the immigrants take far more in government benefits than they provide in tax revenues. So this argument of, oh yeah, we need the immigrants for the old people, no, it simply doesn't work, and it never has worked. But even if it did, is it worth the alienation that it brings with it? You know, as Robert Putnam has demonstrated, diversity leads to people being alienated. It leads to people not trusting each other, and it's not simply a question of natives versus immigrants. It turns out that the natives themselves trust each other less. Multiculturalism is a universal solvent. It destroys community and it destroys nations. Breitbart points out, since his inauguration, Trump has not curbed the inflow of white-collar migrants via the various visa programs, such as the H-1B and OPT programs. Yes, the wonderful programs, for instance, that are turning Seattle into a colony of India. These white-collar programs are used by CEOs and investors to keep roughly 1.5 million foreign workers in U.S. college jobs and force down salaries for a wide range of American graduates. For example, one U.S. computer expert told Breitbart that he is being paid just $20 an hour by a major U.S. bank after starting his career in the early 1980s. Neil Monroe tweets, Goldman Sachs says blue collars are getting a 4.3% raise or $2.7 after inflation. That growth is beating white-collar salary growth since 2016, partly because of higher minimum wage laws, but also because the government imports many foreign grads to lower salaries. I can't think of this as anything other than treason, really. In general, business groups, including the influential tech companies, strongly support the salary-cutting white-collar visa programs. At the same time, Democrats prefer to defend the inflow of roughly 1 million legal immigrants each year. Trump's deputies are likely to continue some visa programs. Many polls show that American voters like and want to like immigrants, but the polls also show that the public strongly objects to companies hiring foreign workers before American employees. For example, an August 2017 poll reported that 68% of Americans oppose companies' use of H-1Bs to outsource U.S.-based jobs that could be held by Americans. So, what does the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, the woman with the strangely frozen face, what does she have to say about this? We're all waiting. She said yesterday that Trump's plan to suspend immigration is distracting from efforts to combat the coronavirus pandemic and part of inconsistent messages that spread fear and put the public in greater danger. You know what puts the public in greater danger? American companies hiring truckers from India. Go to YouTube, look at the videos. Pretty shocking stuff. That certainly puts the American public in greater danger. She said that this was scary for immigrants, family members hoping to immigrate to the United States. They don't have any rights, you know. Oh, what do a bunch of foreigners think about this? Honestly, who cares? These broad statements that come out, I think, are so problematic and counter to, I think, what we need right now more than anything, which is fact-based, scientifically proven best practices, and an optimistic vision of where we are headed and the thrust to make it a reality. This is what we need right now, not additional new things to be upset about, fearful of, or mad about. This is the governor who, of course, has spread a terror in her own state by pretty much banning everyone from doing anything. And she dares talk about fear. Whitmer, who's believed to be a vice presidential contender, I don't think so, because I think the Democrats want to win Michigan this time around, told AP she has not been asked by presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden to participate in any vetting for the role. Whitmer insisted her focus now is on managing the crisis that has devastated her state's economy and killed 2,700 people. Of course, the question is, how many people would have died in Michigan just in an ordinary year? When I see 2,700, that number, this does not strike me as anywhere near a catastrophic number. So, VDARE, what does VDARE have to say about this? Victory, announces the columnist who calls himself Washington Watcher 2. This is a tremendous move. VDARE has castigated the GOP for weeks for doing nothing about immigration in response to the pandemic. Trump just did exactly what's needed. Millions of Americans are out of work, and foreigners could easily bring a second wave of the virus to our shores. There is no reason we should let in hundreds of thousands of immigrants at this time. This proposal signals that Trump is serious about putting America first. He may very well have won re-election tonight. Trump forces Democrats to defend foreigners against the interests of citizens. Trump makes immigration the focus of the coronavirus response. Trump makes a more extensive moratorium, an idea long championed by VDARE, a realistic possibility. This is a huge victory for the cause of immigration patriotism and will reverberate for years to come. Buckle up your seatbelts. 2020 is going to be a wild ride. I don't think that this was really ever about the economy anywhere. I mean, look at Germany. They started importing large numbers of people from Turkey, the so-called Gastarbeiter. This was in the 1960s, and then in 1973, you had a major recession due to the oil shock. And so why did Germany keep bringing in all these people from Turkey? Well, it's simple, because Germany's elite, I hated Germans, and they wanted them replaced with foreigners in the same way that America's elite hates its citizens and Canada's elite hates its citizens, as does the elite in Britain. But, immigration equals coronavirus. That's a short, pithy slogan. Steve Saylor notes response from the chief White House correspondent of the New York Times. Trump, who says the country is ready to begin reopening, says the crisis is so bad that he is signing an order to temporarily suspend immigration into the United States. In other words, Saylor comments, 1, it's crazy for Trump to want Americans to be increasingly allowed out of the house to buy plants for their gardens or walk on the beach or have their hair cut. 2, it's crazy for Trump not to want to let in more immigrants at the moment, what with all the jobs Americans just don't want to do. When you look at the statement by Baker, let's read it again. Trump, who says the country is ready to begin reopening, says the crisis is so bad that he is signing an order to temporarily suspend immigration into the United States. It's incoherent, really. What does the country being ready to begin reopening have to do with keeping out immigrants? I mean, unemployment has reached or will reach something like 30%, which is in the Great Depression, it reached 25%. This is worse than that. So what is the possible justification for bringing in foreigners to compete with Americans for jobs, or alternately not work and get government benefits? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. John Darbyshire says, will temporarily have the same meaning here as it has when we temporarily permit aliens on non-immigrant visas to stay here forever via the temporary protected status program because of some calamity in their home countries? I doubt it, but let's dream. Let's have a look at the chat. Okay. Justin Proto says, the same ACLU that barely made a stir over the completely Stalinist orders by the bureaucrats the last month. Laramie Hirsch, American star of Pelosi eats ice cream on national TV and giggles. Chogokin666 is sick of the corona fuss. Well, I don't know. I think that we're all, well, no, that's not true. There is a minority there, but a sizable minority that is absolutely delighting in this. I talk about the coronavirus a lot on this live stream because that's the news, folks. Coronavirus, are we all gonna die? How irresponsible is it to let life go back to normal? And how are the celebrities faring? How are they holding up under this tremendous strain? Those are the three stories that are in the news. Calix Rose says Trump needs to say, well, I guess the Democrats don't want black men to have decent jobs. Well, the Democratic Party certainly wants them to be angry. And, if a man is working and earning a good wage, he is, all other things being equal, less likely to be angry than if he is on welfare. David Wright says, my brother is a truck driver, says most can't pass drug test. Calix Rose says he could go to every, HBCU and say, well, the Democrats want to hire Indians instead of you. Philip Daniel says Biden's VP pick will probably be Kamala Harris or Stacey Abrams. Stacey Abrams, she is thirsty, no question about that. But again, the wisdom of, especially since, it's almost a certainty that Joe Biden is going to, be incapacitated or dead before January 2021, is certainly not going to be able to get through a first term. So the prospect of a president being a loud, angry, morbidly obese, closeted black lesbian? Is that what the American people want? I really don't think so. Bunch of talk about Rodney Martin. I don't know what that is about. Okay, so let's get back to it. Ivanka Trump fires back at Joe Biden. This is from Breitbart, Kyle Olson. Joe Biden said that Dr. Anthony Fauci, angelic music, should be the only person to speak about coronavirus in the Trump administration. We'd all be better off if the only person we heard from the White House was Dr. Fauci. So why is Joe Biden talking about coronavirus then? Is he an epidemiologist? Let's see. Ivanka Trump said Dr. Birx is an Army colonel and a subject matter expert who has dedicated her life to fighting infectious diseases. Why shouldn't she be able to speak? Okay, it's a little feminist jab there, a little subtle accusation of misogyny made against Joe Biden. That's very clever of Ivanka, I must say. Yes, I said that there are people who are delighting in the COVID-19 panic. Again, from Breitbart, Aaron Klein. As some Florida beaches reopened under social distancing guidelines, Miami Herald Metro columnist Fabiola Santiago tweeted on Sunday that Florida residents packing beaches should work nicely to thin the ranks of Trump, DeSantis, Jimenez supporters in Florida who value money over health. Donald Trump Jr. said that this tweet from a Miami Herald columnist tells all you need to know about her, and based on their hiring choices, likely everything you need to know about the Miami Herald as well. Their flagrant bias continues to go on unchecked. Disgusting. Yes, they want Trump supporters to die. They want them to die. And others noted the lack of criticism about Manhattan's Central Park still being open to the public. Oh dear. How is it that Bill de Blasio hasn't shut down Central Park? Maybe, ring it with highly armed police officers. People magazine recently published photographs showing crowds in Central Park clearly breaking the 6 feet apart guidelines, with many not wearing face masks. Yeah, absolutely shocking. Newly reopened at Jacksonville Beach only allows essential activities, which include recreational activities consistent with social distancing guidelines such as walking, biking, hiking, fishing, running, swimming, taking care of pets, and surfing. Again, as Christopher Ferrara has pointed out, this so-called social distancing has so many loopholes in it that it has no effective meaning. It really doesn't at all. It's just a feel good, or rather a feel bad measure. Government has to do something. There must be pain. The pain must be shared. Phillip Rucker of the Washington Post, he said that Trump showed solidarity with the neo-Nazi protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia in August 17. I think that people should make more of this story than has been made, which is that the media continues to lie about this. And when the facts are pointed out to them, they just keep on lying. Phillip Rucker, the Washington Post White House bureau chief, claimed falsely on MSNBC on Monday that Trump is supporting protests against strict coronavirus stay-at-home orders in the same way that he supposedly showed solidarity with neo-Nazis in Charlottesville. Rucker was appearing on MSNBC's The 11th Hour with anchor Brian Williams, who was famously demoted to the cable network after repeatedly fabricating the news. Rucker's neo-Nazis claim is also a fabrication, one widely debunked and particularly egregious, coming from the Post reporter in charge of primary reporting on the Trump administration. He is in a position to know better. President Trump condemned neo-Nazis who marched in Charlottesville, Virginia in August 2017 totally and repeatedly. On August the 12th, he condemned violence on many sides in Charlottesville after neo-Nazi and Antifa clashes. On August 14th, he condemned neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups in a White House statement. And on August 15th, he condemned neo-Nazis, totally praised nonviolent protesters on both sides of the statue debate. The Fine People hoax, used repeatedly by CNN and presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden, claims falsely that Trump referred to the neo-Nazis in Charlottesville as very fine people. This is simply untrue, as the transcript of Trump's remarks and as contemporaneous reporting by CNN show. Trump was referring to nonviolent protesters on both sides of the removal of a statue of a Confederate general from a public park as very fine people. Here's what Trump said. Excuse me, they didn't put themselves down as neo-Nazis, and you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. And the reporter says, George Washington and Robert E. Lee are not the same. Trump said, oh no, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, excuse me, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down his statue? He was a major slave owner. Are you going to take down his statue? You know what? It's fine. You're changing history. You're changing culture, and you had people. And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group, too. The president also specifically called the murder of left-wing protester Heather Heyer by a neo-Nazi terrorism on August the 15th. As I say, the media needs to be pounded on this repeatedly because they have been told the truth. They have been shown the clips, the transcripts, but they continue to lie. This is what Rucker said. The other thing that President sees when he looks at images of these protesters like the ones playing right now is he sees his own campaign banner. He knows that these are his supporters. They may not all be his supporters. We're not sure who they're going to vote for in November, but many of them are Trump supporters, are waving Trump flags. And Trump, the president, knows that he needs to show some solidarity with them. It's one of the reasons why, for example, after the Charlottesville attack, he showed solidarity with the neo-Nazi protesters there. Yes, the implication of Rucker's false claim is that neo-Nazis are among Trump's political supporters. Well, I suppose that some of them are. To the extent that I keep up with the Whig-Nat world, they seem to have turned completely on Trump, denouncing him as a sellout and worse than Obama or whatever. The media, it serves no serious purpose any longer. Speaking truth to power, ha bloody ha. Jeff Pojanowski tweets, non-trolling, serious question, am I right in sensing that the received wisdom is shifting from we need to stay home until we can expand medical capacity and slowly loosen restrictions to we need to stay home till we have a vaccine? Yes, I noted this myself yesterday. Okay, so the curve has been flattened. There's lots of empty space in the hospitals. Can we get back to normal? Oh, no, we can't. Well, why not? Well, we need a vaccine. When is that coming? We don't know. Oh, so you're saying that this could go on, what, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? Well, you know, if it saves just one life, they actually, you know, this is what they believe. Let's see. The World Health Organization has been thoroughly disgraced by the coronavirus affair. but they're continuing to issue pronunciamentos. This is from the Daily Mirror. The WHO has warned that a new way of living will be needed until a coronavirus vaccine is ready. You see, gotta have the vaccine. And so until then, economy smashed, society atomized totally, and civil liberties, bye-bye. Takeshi Kasai, the WHO's regional director for the Western Pacific, has said that lifting lockdown measures too quickly will leave countries vulnerable to new surges of infections. The WHO has urged governments to lift the social distancing measures gradually to keep the deadly bug in check. Is it a deadly bug? I mean, the World Health Organization was saying in January that it was not really anything to worry about, that it wasn't even proved that it could be communicated from person to person, and that the real killer virus was xenophobia, with its stigmatization. Speaking at an online press conference, Dr. Kasai said that no country is safe from a potentially overwhelming outbreak if COVID-19 is still circulating. As a result, ordinary people's lives and health systems will both need to adapt because of the global pandemic. Individuals in society need to be ready for a new way of living. Yeah, who died and made him king? Here's a funny story. Apparently there's some resistance to the neo-Stalinist takeover of the West. It's from the New York Post. Mayor Bill de Blasio's critics let him know how they really felt about him, ordering New Yorkers to snitch on each other for violating social distancing rules by flooding his new tip line with crank complaints, including dick pics and people flipping the bird. Photos of extended middle fingers, the mayor dropping the Staten Island groundhog, and news coverage of him going to the gym have all been texted to a special tip line that de Blasio announced Saturday, according to screenshots posted on Twitter. One user sent the message, "We will fight this tyrannical overreach to the service," and got an automated message that in part said hello and thank you for texting NYC 311. FU replied Morgan L. Schmidt 1, along with a meme showing Adolf Hitler and the words, "To those turning in your neighbors and local businesses, you did the right thing." Start flooding the reporting text numbers with these pics, the tweet added. Other profane messages included a photo of a bowl of gummy candies in the shape of male genitalia and a sign saying, well, I won't say what the sign says. Oh, it is not immediately clear whether any of the posters actually lived in New York City. Yes, it was those terrible out-of-towners. An NYPD source said that dick pic photos of real penises have also been texted 311, and a caller phoned in a tip that de Blasio was seen. I'm not going to repeat that. He looked at me and coughed in my direction, the caller said. Cough is a newly coined term for coughing while infected with the coronavirus, according to the Urban Dictionary website. The inundation of off-color texts was so large, the city had to temporarily shut down the service. Indeed, fight the power. So, a commentary from Jackie Deason and Real Clear Politics, what a prolonged shutdown will cost in human life. Ezekiel Emanuel, advisor to presidential campaign Joe Biden and Obamacare architect, just called for a 12 to 18-month lockdown to battle COVID-19, asking us to abandon our livelihoods, religious services, and contact with friends and extended family. He claims we have no choice, and that the alternative is hundreds of thousands of deaths. How long before that becomes millions of deaths or tens of millions of deaths? Emmanuel also said that COVID-19 is a great argument for universal health care coverage. When President Trump expressed concerns about the shutdown, his critics presented a false choice between mitigating deaths and the economy. In reality, a great number of the most vulnerable American lives will be lost from economic shutdown, and Manuel makes it clear that we've reached the moment where we must plead their case. A prolonged shutdown could bring tens of thousands of deaths through spikes in rates of suicide, heart attack, missed cancer diagnoses, domestic violence death, substance abuse, and more. We have evidence that these deaths are coming and the shutdown is only a month old. A suicide spike is almost certain. One study in Taiwan indicated a 10% increase in the unemployment rate yielded approximately 30,000 suicides annually. Another global study linked the 2008 recession to a 20 to 30% increase in the relative risks of suicides. We already have a suicide epidemic in this country before the virus, with nearly 50,000 Americans taking their own lives and an additional estimated 1.4 million attempting to do so in 2018 alone. The Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis estimates over 52 million will be laid off just by the second quarter of 2020 for a 32.1% unemployment rate, far higher than Great Depression estimates of 20 to 25% unemployment. Should these predictions materialize, and if history can be our guide, we are going to lose tens of thousands of American lives to suicide or more if these impacts of a 3-month shutdown were extended to realize Emmanuel's plan of a 12 to 18-month-long shutdown. After only a few weeks of lockdown, calls to crisis hotlines increased from $1,000 to $25,000 a day in Indiana, and 8,900% increased in Los Angeles. Expect an increase in heart attacks too. Disruption-related stress attacks the heart. The National Institutes of Health reported that just the 1-hour fully anticipated daylight savings time change correlates with a 24% increase in daily acute myocardial infarction. What will be the increase in heart attacks when the disruption to our lives is not just 1 hour, but instead 12 to 18 months? As elective, routine cancer screenings are delayed, we should expect missed cancer diagnoses and an increase in cancer deaths. Cancers with routine screening include breast cancer, 200 to 300,000 new cases annually, colorectal, 140,000 new cases, prostate, 200 to 300,000 new cases, melanoma, 96,000 new cases, and cervical, 12,000 new cases. Domestic violence spikes in times of home confinement. After only 1 week of shelter-in-place, women's shelters in the Dallas-Fort Worth region were fielding an increase in extremely violent calls that are COVID-19 related. Running out of space, they diverted victims from shelters to hotels. As early as March 22nd, North Texas saw a spike in severe child abuse cases, including death. For each of the above causes of death, the death toll would surely mount depending on severity and duration of the economic lockdown. Over 12 to 18 months, could deaths reach hundreds of thousands? Conversely, would COVID-19 deaths reach original projections if we end the lockdown? No. Those estimates assumed we did nothing. Americans are now too educated and concerned not to take precautions. Biden advisor Emmanuel warned that many Americans have not seen firsthand what devastation a positive test can inflict. True. Would a COVID-19 diagnosis with a single-digit chance of death be any more devastating than discovering a family member after a suicide, more devastating than dying in a hospice? Again, as I suggested yesterday, I kind of get the feeling that this is like a controlled death plan. Let's just pull a few levers and see what the results are. Let's cull the weakest from our society. Okay, more about protests. Bill Barr, who's the Attorney General of the United States, has threatened to join lawsuits against governors who refuse to roll back stay-at-home orders, which he compares to house arrest. He said he would not rule out legal action against states if he thought their actions infringed civil liberties. Governors across the nation have closed businesses and schools and banned social gatherings in the face of the pandemic that has killed more than 43,000 Americans. Over the past week, a smattering of scattered protests have called for those orders to be eased to dull the disease's heavy economic toll. We're looking carefully at a number of these rules that are being put in place, and if we think one goes too far, we initially try to jawbone the governors into rolling them back or adjusting them, he said in a radio interview on the Hugh Hewitt Show Tuesday. And if they're not, and people bring lawsuits, we file statements of interest and side with the plaintiffs as lawsuits develop. As specific cases emerge in the states, we'll take a look at them. His comments come after the Justice Department recently sided with a Mississippi church that sued the city of Greenville over state shutdown orders on the grounds it was imposing on religious freedoms. The curious situation we have here. Trump is supposed to be, another Hitler or worse than Hitler, as Sarah Silverman said. But it's Trump who here is standing for the civil rights of Americans, while the elite, the left, they don't think Americans have any civil rights. Civil rights are suspended. Why? Oh, we have this deadly disease. Really? How deadly is it? So deadly that you have to fake the numbers, which is now being done routinely across the United States, adding New York City, 3,800 names were added to the list, diagnosing deaths as the cause of them being COVID-19 when there is 1, no testing, and 2, no symptoms. This is outright fraud. Barr said Tuesday the stay-at-home orders come disturbingly close to house arrest, but could in some cases be justified to protect public safety. He said there was a distinction between stay-at-home orders requiring people to maintain a distance of 6 feet or to wear masks in public. Those orders are fine because they reduce the risk of transmission. He said he was more concerned about blunter orders, which call for staying at home or shutting down a business, regardless of the capacity of the business to operate. Safety. Barr spoke after Georgia's Republican Governor Brian Kemp on Monday ordered a relaxation of state stay-home orders. Georgia gyms, tattoo parlors, and bowling alleys can open as soon as Friday under Kemp's latest orders. Hair salons and massage therapy, as long as social distancing guidelines are practiced. By Monday, movie theaters and restaurants will be allowed to open. People are going to have to 6 feet apart in movie theaters. So what's the capacity of the movie theaters going to be? Is it going to be 20%? It's going to be maximum capacity. Obviously, the theaters are going to be losing money under such a scenario. However, some Democratic governors have said they will keep stay-home orders in place until coronavirus testing improves dramatically or until their states can meet health targets. The vaccine. Got to wait for the vaccine. Okay. Let's have another look at the chat. Alex Dillard says, and you've never seen a death record until COVID. I don't know what that means, actually. Ultra Testosterone says Biden is too senile. He is. But here you see what Noam Chomsky called manufactured consent. No, Joe Biden's not senile. He's right on top of things. Play clip of Biden. Oh, well, yeah, I mean, anything can be taken out of context. How is that taken out of context? He has what he is supposed to say written on cards in front of him, and he can't repeat what's on the cards. That is very, very serious. Okay, R.I.P. Corn Pop. Yes. Trump. I don't know whether you saw the video. It's Obama. With a group of other black men, and they're watching Biden talking about hairs on his legs curling up, and the children patting down his legs, and how he learned about children in his lap, and the black men look bemused, and then they turn to Obama, and he gives them, what am I going to do about it? Look. Donald Robertson, a response to Alec Dillard's Spanish flu death rate was 2.6%. Yeah, as I say, the latest findings we have is that the death rate from COVID is going to be somewhere between 0.1% and 0.4%, which is flu-related death rates. Mike says, come on, Kevin, we've all sniffed children before. He's weird. He's deeply, deeply weird. He's supposed to be a regular guy, but he flies into rages at the slightest provocation. Look fat, that sort of thing. He was a poor student. Now, I'm not going to hold that against him, but he's continually lying about his academic record and talking about his stratospheric IQ. My IQ is higher than your IQ. This is not very politic, you know. Getting into those kind of disputes with voters. I mean, the media has been protecting this fellow for years. If they hadn't been protecting him, he would have been laughed out of public life. No question about it. Yes, Manfred von Thistlebaum says the official policy is to attribute even suspected deaths to COVID. Yes, exactly. Even when one, no testing, two, no symptoms. No symptoms. C.D. Kaleo says Germany, Iceland, and Boston, as well as Chelsea, Massachusetts, are seriously undermining the need for panic. Yes, they are. And, okay, so, Bill, I think we've covered Bill Barr. Oh, back to Gretchen Whitmer, the curiously frozen-faced governor of Michigan. She, on Monday, took another jab at American citizens who have taken their frustration with the economic shutdowns to the streets. President Trump called this a war, and it is exactly that. Let's act like it. What, are we going to start shooting people? She said on Monday, in World War II, there weren't people lining up at the Capitol to protest the fact that they had to drop everything they were doing and build planes or tanks or to ration food. They were paid for building planes or tanks, you dimwit. They rolled up their sleeves and they got to work. This woman, she's so stupid. They rolled up their sleeves and they got to work. They're protesting. One of the reasons they're protesting is because their jobs have been deemed non-essential, so they can't roll up their sleeves and get to work. We were all in this together, and it wasn't indefinite. What? It was until we had beaten the enemy. Well, again, we were told, got to flatten that curve, got to get some room in the hospitals. Well, both those things have happened. And Gretchen Whitmer wants the shutdown to continue. And, you know, we keep hearing 12 to 18 months, 12 to 18 months. We know that when people gather that way without masks, they were in close proximity, they were touching one another. That's how COVID-19 spreads. So the sad irony here is the protest was that they don't like being in this stay-home order, and they may have just created the need to lengthen it. Human contact is bad. Human contact is sinful. Maybe that's part of the new normal. I strongly suspect that it is. Do you think it's coincidence that the media keeps pushing stories about sex robots? It was that old song, hit for Barbra Streisand, people who need people are the luckiest people in the world. Well, apparently they're the unluckiest people in the world now, because people don't need people. The internet. You got the internet, you got the takeout delivery. What more do you deplorables want? Texas Dan Patrick says that there are more important things than living. This is from the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. After indicating last month that he would exchange his life to help keep the economy afloat, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said on Fox Monday that he was grateful Texas is taking the first steps to reopen the economy amid the coronavirus outbreak. I'm sorry to say I was right on this, and I'm thankful that we are now finally beginning to open up Texas and other states because it's been long overdue. Patrick recounted the numbers of COVID-19 related deaths. You see this phrase beginning to sneak into stories? COVID-19 related deaths in Texas. 495 as of Monday night. He stressed that every life is valuable, but compared them to the state's population of 29 million people. One of the things that the COVID-19 panic hysteria has shown that a great many people have difficulty in appreciating large numbers. I think for a great many people, any number over, 10,000 is basically incomprehensible to them. Okay, so 495 Texans dead COVID-related deaths. And does that sound like a lot? Well, I guess it depends. If you had a town of 2,495 people had died, yes, that would be catastrophic. But 495 dead in a state with a population of 29 million people is nowhere near a catastrophe. Patrick said 500 people out of 29 million, and we're locked down, and we're crushing the average worker, we're crushing small business, we're crushing the markets, we're crushing this country. And what I said when I was with you last night, that there are more important things than living, and that's saving this country for my children and my grandchildren, and saving this country for all of us. And I don't want to die. Nobody wants to die, but man, we got to take some risks and get back in the game and get this country back up and running. Well, yeah, there's the American spirit. Oh, Alex Berenson reports that the Wisconsin legislature has sued the state over the lockdown. He tweeted an hour ago, he was asked, what do you think is behind the asymptomatic cases angle? The walking infected seems to be a critical cornerstone of the push to maintain lockdowns. People believe it is terrifying and dangerous, but it's not a new paradigm. And yes, he attaches a story from Britain. 77% of flu infections have no symptoms, say experts, reports ITV News. How about that? Berenson responds, I don't know. I'm increasingly puzzled by the US media / public health refusal to let positive data and studies get in the way of the narrative that indefinite lockdowns are the only answer, especially since European countries are beginning to reopen. Well, these public health officials, they have an enormous amount of power now, and they're enjoying it. These people are anonymous previously. Now they're famous, and having gotten this power, they don't want to surrender it. The Daily Mail reports the U.S. states planning to reopen Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina, as well as Texas. South Carolina says department stores and some other retail businesses can reopen as early as Tuesday. Michigan, Wisconsin, and Idaho have all expressed plans to reopen in some form by May the 1st, over Gretchen Whitmer's dead body, presumably. 7 states, Arkansas, Iowa, Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming, still have no stay-at-home orders in place for its residents. These states have been devastated? You know, just massive death toll. I guess we'll be able to check the numbers soon enough. Yeah, barbers are going to reopen. Barbershops are going to reopen in Georgia. Gyms. I have been reading, and there's memes out there from Lord of the Rings that apparently gym rats are suffering greatly, and their memories of their, gym routines are fading from them. But in Georgia, soon we'll be able to go back to the gym. From the Daily Mail, coronavirus hospitalizations in New York hit lowest number since March the 25th. That was 27 days ago. As Governor Cuomo, the Love Gov, says he will let some parts of the state reopen before others. He did not say which ones. It will depend, he said, on the local region's trajectory and how equipped it is to handle a spike in cases. New York City has by far the highest number of cases and deaths, many of which are fake, but it's further along in its trajectory. The number of new hospitalizations on Monday was 1,308, which is the lowest since March 25th. The number of deaths was 481, which marks the second consecutive day it has been lower than 500. Now let's just check this out here. So under 500 deaths, rather similar numbers to Texas, right? And what is the population of New York State? Well, it is 19.5 million people. again, it doesn't sound all that devastating. You know, we were told, you remember when the media was running pictures of, hospitals that just completely overrun? Oh, sorry, we made a mistake. That's Italy. Yeah, a mistake, was it? And it turned out, for all of the talk about hospitals being overrun, last week they're already down to like 20% capacity. Meanwhile, cancer screening, cancer operations, all that sort of thing, not being done. Okay. So, yeah, that's the latest from the LoveGov. This is again from Breitbart. The coronavirus has infected roughly 4.1% of the population in California's Los Angeles County, suggesting the region's outbreak is far more widespread than previously thought, between 28 and 55 times higher than the number of confirmed cases, new research shows, echoing the findings of a similar study elsewhere in the state. However, the new data, if accurate, also indicates that the coronavirus death rate in LA County, the most populous in the country, is lower than initially predicted. Researchers from the University of Southern California and the LA Department of Public Health gleaned the data from antibody testing of about 863 county residents. Antibodies are an indication that an individual's immune system has responded to a past infection. If accurate, the top end of the estimated number of LA County residents who may have contracted the virus would amount to more than 56% of the total number of cases in the United States. How about that? Stanford University researchers who looked at California's Santa Clara County, much less populated than its LA counterpart, reached similar conclusions, finding that the coronavirus outbreak may be more widespread but less deadly than originally estimated. The Stanford University researchers found that between 2.5% and 4.2% of county residents had antibodies to the coronavirus by early April. So on the one hand, you have the shutdown folks who keep harping on the deaths without talking about, how relevant is this in the context of the population? Also, how many people have been exposed to the virus? How many people have COVID-19? Because all the evidence is pointing very strongly to this being no more deadly than a bad flu year. For instance, I mentioned, a couple of years ago in the United States, flu victims were being treated in tents because hospitals were running out of space, but for some reason, there was no lockdown. The economy was not deliberately smashed. The population was not totally atomized, and civil rights were not suspended. It's really beginning to seem like a plandemic, isn't it? Again, this is from Alex Berenson from Sweden. A new study shows that at least 11% of people in Stockholm have COVID antibodies. The actual number is likely much higher. From the article, Stockholmers have already become infected. According to calculations, the spread is still large, but is slowly declining. In about a month, the worst spread of infection will be over in Stockholm. Then we will be close to the so-called herd immunity, Tom Britton tells SVT. Although Britton's calculations do not fully match the tests conducted by Jan Albert, Britton believes that there are no contradictions between the two studies. Again, Sweden did not go crazy like most of the countries in the West. And we were told with some glee that as a result of this gross stupidity, Sweden was going to be largely depopulated, but that is not going to happen. Indeed, I believe I talked last week about the Israeli general who said that 40 days, diseases such as coronavirus largely burn themselves out. And the reason is well known, is because these viruses attack the low-hanging fruit. And after the low-hanging fruit has been taken, it becomes harder and harder for healthy people to be much discomfited by these viruses. Oh, what's happening in France? Paris has seen a second night of riots break out over police heavy-handed treatment of ethnic minorities during the coronavirus lockdown. This is too funny. It's always got to be about the minorities somehow. That heavy-handed treatment? You mean like when the police, they were attacking firefighters in Paris? That sounds pretty heavy-handed. The yellow vests were certainly subjected to heavy-handed treatment. Let's see. Anger erupted in the French capital last night during the early hours of Monday morning over alleged racist police attacks. In response, police used tear gas and baton charges in Villeneuve-la-Garenne, northern Paris, on Monday morning as fireworks exploded in the street. Armed police were seen moving through the area as groups of protesters congregated. Fireworks were again being launched at police last night as heavily armed riot police took to the streets of Paris. So apparently, police are being attacked with fireworks, and they're not taking this very well. Who would have thunk it, eh? President Emmanuel Macron has extended France's social distancing measures until May the 11th. Its daily death toll from the virus fell to the lowest level in 3 weeks today, as 395 deaths were recorded, bringing the total to 19,718, though deaths are typically underreported over the weekend. Always underreported. Videos of the trouble posted by the French journalist Taha Bouhafs, who is from an Algerian background, includes one of him being manhandled by police, leading to allegations of racism. Yes, apparently any police action taken against a racial minority must be racist. I mean, by definition. Friends of the victim, who have not been named, claim the incident on Saturday night was an example of police heavy-handedness against an ethnic minority community. The very badly injured man comes from an Arab Muslim background. Well, I don't know, we may see a sea change in France over this. One gets the impression that the French are absolutely fed up with their newcomers, and coronavirus provides a pretext for actually doing something about that. In Britain, Matt the Dove holds out no hope of end to lockdown as depressing death and infection charts stay obstinately high, and Boris Johnson sides with ministers pushing for restrictions to stay possibly 4 months. This is from the Daily Mail. Again, I don't know how many months Britain can survive this lockdown. And given the activities of the police, the corona cops, I don't know. I think that they might be starting to get a little worried about their future. It's not, they have gone out of their way to embarrass people, to interfere in their lives, and they seem to be greatly enjoying this. Hancock, the health secretary, vowed not to compromise the national effort against the disease, as Professor Jonathan Van Tam told the Daily Downing Street briefing that while hospital occupancy rates had dipped in London, the picture in other parts of the UK was more of a plateau. Again, the curve, it's been flattened, right? The figures, along with another 828 deaths being declared in the UK, add weight to the arguments of those who want to err on the side of caution, despite the devastation being wreaked on the economy. Divisions have emerged between cabinet doves, such as Hancock, and hawks, who believe the NHS has capacity and would prefer to loosen the draconian social distancing measures earlier. The PM has intervened from his recuperation at Chequers, that's his country home, to snuff out speculation about an imminent easing, with Downing Street making clear his priority is avoiding a second peak in the outbreak. There are reports Johnson's inner circle has stopped using the phrase exit strategy and instead wants to signal a next phase of lockdown, with varying levels of restrictions set to continue for the rest of the year until the virus gets close to eradication or a vaccine is found. Well, all they have to say is, waves. Maybe there'll be up to 10 waves. We can never ease the lockdown because the waves are just going to keep coming. They're coming. They keep coming. Game over, man. Scientists have been telling ministers behind the scenes that control of the outbreak is still so uncertain that even slight changes to the curbs on normal life could result in a disastrous flare-up. Hancock said, "We have been clear that we will not risk lives by relaxing the social distancing rules before our 5 tests have been met." Yes, okay. Crushing the economy is risking lives. It is killing people. We had that fellow go crazy in Nova Scotia, killing over 20 people in what seems to be coronavirus-related outbreak. Let's see. The Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Professor Van Tam, said, "It is absolutely clear that there have been peaks, nor is it absolutely clear that the number of cases is dropping. We must keep pushing on social distancing." Wow, these doctors are a real bossy lot, aren't they? Boris Johnson appears to be gearing up to take back the reins of government. Speaking to Donald Trump on the phone today, although Downing Street insisted he is not doing any official work. He looks absolutely terrible. And again, I'm going to suggest, as I did yesterday, that this is more due to his new vegan diet than anything else. You know, the Tory party is famous for blasting the Labour Party, claiming the Labour Party, basically communists, and they wanted Britain to be like Soviet Russia was. But it took a conservative government to actually make this real. How about that? Oh, yes, and another reference to what the WHO has to say. From Germany to the US and even Andorra, mass antibody testing schemes are being carried out around the world, but health chiefs have only analyzed 5,000 blood samples in Britain. I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that they want to know how many people have been exposed to the coronavirus and how many people have or have had COVID-19, because it would be embarrassing. It would simply be embarrassing, and it would demonstrate, as has been demonstrated elsewhere, that this panic was wholly uncalled for. Nigel Farage says, "The peoples of Western nations were quick to surrender their hard-won liberties to national governments in the early days of the coronavirus panic, but it may take years or decades to get them back." And let's see here. Let's see if I can find this. Benjamin Franklin, a noted American, said something quite apposite on this subject. Let's see if I can bring it up. Yes, this is what Benjamin Franklin said. "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." I suppose Benjamin Franklin, whose portrait appears on the American $100 bill, if he would say something like that today, would be called a virus denier, perhaps a dangerous extremist. I mean, you know, carrying on as if liberty were actually something important. So Nigel Farage was speaking to Alex Marlowe on the Breitbart News Daily Show. He said that he had serious concerns about the way the British public was under virtual house arrest, and that the police forces were becoming a rule unto themselves. But most concerning, the Brexit pioneer said, was how the police's theoretically temporary powers had been codified into law and could be retained long-term on flimsy pretexts. This, Farage said, would be seriously detrimental to the British people. Quote, "In times of crisis, governments take more power and citizens generally quite freely allow them to. The biggest ever expansion of the British government was in World War II, when the government had almost total power. In 6 months' time, when that legislation comes up for renewal, I can already see the argument being made, but we mustn't take these powers away from the authorities in case we have another outbreak." That's a very genius excuse. In case we have another outbreak, there are always going to be outbreaks of viruses. There are always going to be epidemics and pandemics. Oh, but that's not tolerable. Well, we tolerated it before, but apparently no longer. Surrendering power to the state happens very quickly. It happens in times of crisis. Getting back those liberties and freedoms tends to be a battle that goes on for years or decades, so I'm very worried about it. Citing European nation Austria as a source of inspiration, Farage says social distancing rules make sense, but I do think we have to find ways to allow some resumption of economic life without taking stupid risks. For example, Austria, they started to ease last Tuesday. They're beginning to allow non-essential shops and businesses to open, but everyone has got to keep 6 feet away from each other, and everyone has got to wear a face mask, and that's the way we've got to start to move forward. Is there any evidence that face masks have any use for common citizens, for people not working in hospitals or clinics? If there is, I have not seen it. Farage's remarks followed others by eminent British jurist Lord Sumption, who recently retired from the UK's Supreme Court. Expressing his own concerns in comments to the state broadcaster, the BBC, he said, "This is what a police state is like. It is a state in which the government can issue orders or express preferences with no legal authority, and the police enforce ministers' wishes." The British government can talk about a lockdown extending for another 12 to 18 months, but the bonds of community and authority in Britain have become so frayed that I think that they'd be risking a total collapse in public order. And this may happen sooner rather than later. A very amusing piece from the Babylon Bee, which has a remarkable success rate for its joke. And it's a COVID-19 talking points translation guide. So it gives you the talking point and the translation. Shutting down the whole economy could have some bad consequences. Translation, I want people to die. I'm a little worried about government overreach. Translation, I want people to die. What about my constitutional rights? I want people to die. The virus originated in Wuhan, China. Translation, I want people to die, and also I am a racist. Trump has managed this situation fairly well. Translation, I want people to die as I worship at my shrine of Trump. The WHO kind of blew it on this one. Translation, I want people to die and I hate science. I sure would like to go for a jog today. Translation, I want people to die so I can jog over their lifeless bodies. And finally, stay the F home. Translation, I have an unlimited love for humanity, and I believe together we can end death for good. Yeah, even if it saves one life. Only a crazy person would say something like that, but we're hearing it all the time from our leaders. It seems our leaders, they really have a secret envy of the People's Republic of China. They get things done there. There's no mewling about constitutional rights. The People's Republic of China. China's state-run Global Times propaganda newspaper began the week on Monday with columns proclaiming the end of American democracy and declaring that Washington was no match for China in fighting diseases. This is from Francis Martel. China is the country of origin of the Wuhan coronavirus pandemic, which it allowed to become a threat to humanity on a global scale by persecuting doctors and others who wanted to share information on a contagious disease spreading in the central city of Wuhan. One study found that the Chinese Communist Party could have prevented, if not for its censorship and incompetence, as many as 95% of the world's coronavirus cases. The Chinese government officially denies being the origin country of the virus, despite no evidence existing contradicting this conclusion. Chinese foreign ministry officials have accused the American army of creating the virus in a laboratory. The Global Times dismissed America as a collapsing empire in a column featured prominently on Monday, claiming that the official number of cases in the US versus those in China, which are widely considered false, shows that China is a superior public health power. The COVID-19 spread in the US is almost like that of a primitive society. It should not have been like this if the US had the slightest science and organization. To put it bluntly, the US is no match for China in terms of anti-epidemic organization and mobilization. The US political system has been hit by the pandemic on its weak side, and we were willing to show understanding for that. After all, every system has its weaknesses. So, yes, the Global Times claimed to abandon understanding for the U.S. because the administration of President Trump has repeatedly blamed China for not being forthcoming with the actuality. In that case, it is not our fault to reveal the miserable failure of the U.S., says the Chinese newspaper. China's achievements stand the test of time and all kinds of doubts. The Trump administration only wants to shirk responsibility by blackening China. This will be proven a lame trick. This will only reflect the incompetence and ethical failings of the related U.S. politicians. You know, it's sinister and it's funny at the same time. Some believe that American democracy is dying. Indeed, the recent chaos in the country has proved its decay. It allows infighting between the federal and the states at this critical time, aggravates U.S. society's fragmentation and polarization, and will erode the country's long-term interests. And it is the American people who will bear the losses and pain. Yes, the Chinese government really cares about the American people. I mean, just listen to what they have to say. Let's see, on Monday, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Geng Shuang compared blaming China for the pandemic to blaming the United States for the fall of Lehman Brothers, a global financial services firm that went out of business in 2008. AIDS was first reported in the U.S. in the 1980s and then swept across the world, causing untold sufferings to countless victims. Did anyone come forward and ask the U.S. to be held accountable? He told reporters. In addition, Kishore Mahbubani, a professor at the National University of Singapore, said in an interview the other day that the financial turmoil in the U.S. triggered by the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008 turned into a global financial crisis. Did anyone ask the U.S. to take the consequences? They both seem to be missing the point about Lehman Brothers. Lehman Brothers was chosen as a sacrificial victim. Oh, you know, Wall Street can't get through this unscathed. Who can we throw to the wolves? How about Lehman Brothers? That's pretty much exactly what happened. So China gives us the coronavirus, and what do we give China? In exchange, money. Lots and lots of money. California Governor Gavin Newsom's decision to spend almost $1 billion in taxpayer funds to buy protective masks drew national attention as an aggressive move by California to solve one of the most nagging problems of the coronavirus crisis. But almost 2 weeks after he announced the deal during a cable TV interview, very few details have been disclosed. The governor's advisors have so far declined requests for information about the agreement with BYD, the Chinese electric car manufacturer hired to produce the masks, although the state has already wired the company the first installment of $495 million. The stories that I've indicated show that this Chinese PPE has a failure rate of about 50%. But sure, give them $495 million up front to a company that builds electric cars. Newsom, who has been praised for his efforts to slow the spread of the disease, in Wikipedia, there would be parentheses there after that clause with the words citation needed. He bristled on Saturday at suggestions that his administration has been too slow to explain a deal that will cost California's taxpayers 30% more than his January budget would spend on infectious disease prevention for an entire fiscal year. Yeah, so this coronavirus is winding down. Now is the time to blow $1 billion on masks. I'm for outcome here, Newsom shot back. Some are consumed by process, personality, intrigue, who's up, who's down. We are for actually solving a major, major problem, not only for the state, but potentially a template for the country. BYD, a Shenzhen-based company whose initials stand for Build Your Dreams, has staked its reputation on building electric vehicles. It is a U.S. subsidiary based in Los Angeles with a vehicle manufacturing facility in Lancaster. The company currently employs about 1,000 people in California. Exactly how BYD has converted some of its manufacturing efforts in China to begin producing protective masks is unclear. On March the 13th, it touted the creation of the world's largest mass-produced face masks plant in a news release posted on the company's website. The company announced that it would make 5 million masks a day far surpassing the 100 million masks a month promised by 3M, the company best known for producing N95 masks used to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus. I just get the feeling that, California has wired the $495 million to China, and then a plane will land, and it will be filled with pallets, boxes, and they open up these boxes, and they're baby wipes or something like that. These aren't masks. Yes, these are masks. See? Officially certified as masks. I got a suspicion something like that is going to happen. As a piece in the... let's go back to the chat for more about China. Okay. Ultra testosterone. A lot of one-word posts. This idea that there's a grand conspiracy to misattribute deaths to COVID-19 is patently absurd. Well, as I pointed out, Dr. Scott Jensen, who's also a Minnesota State Senator, has released the PDF from the Centers for Disease Control with its guidance, and he's recently revealed that Minnesota doctors have been told by state authorities to classify deaths as COVID-19 when there is no testing or even no symptoms. So yeah, this is a conspiracy, but it happens to be a true conspiracy. People like KMG had never seen a death record until COVID-19. That is actually not true. Okay. See what else we got here. Has he talked about Better Call Saul yet? No, not yet. That will be coming up in a little while. Okay. Breadlines. Ashy Bravo says, bro, are we all going to die? Tell me the truth, fam. Yeah, we're all going to die. But the question is when. That's the reality of the fact that everyone is going to die is not in doubt. Okay, so the national interest. James J. Carafano has an essay, The Great U.S.-China Divorce Has Arrived. Make no mistake, the global struggle with China is about to go to the next level, or 2 or 3, by triggering a global disease outbreak. The Chinese Communist Party's reprehensible behavior crossed the last line, leaving other nations no recourse but to push back hard. No longer can responsible nations tolerate the regime's destabilizing interference around the world. Post-COVID-19, there will be a new world map, and this is what it is going to look like. Let's start with what the map doesn't look like. There won't be big, bold circles, blue and red, demarking spheres of influence and control. This isn't like most other great power competitions, from Inter Caetera to the Cold War. For one, the U.S. is a global power with global interests and responsibilities. Washington is going to cede any part of the world to Beijing. Conversely, China's reach is worldwide. No one is going to stop doing business with China, least of all the United States. China doesn't have a hammerlock in any part of the world other than North Korea and a handful of Southeast Asian countries. And Beijing may find it can't keep those countries under its thumb forever. Disputes over the Mekong River in Southeast Asia, for example, may open wedges for countries seeking a more independent line from Beijing. And I think it's quite possible that many of China's neighbors might decide that with the United States flexing its muscles, they would prefer to be on America's side than China's. China, of course, has fast friends elsewhere, but partnerships with Russia, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, and the like are of marginal benefit at best. The vast majority of the world is and will remain for the foreseeable future divided into 3 camps. The free world, resilient against Chinese meddling. 2, the balancers, nations that recognize the key to their prosperity and security is engaging with both the United States and China. And 3, contested space, where the U.S., China, and others compete for influence across the spectrum of economic, political, security, and information spheres. Yeah, the free world, resilient against Chinese meddling. What we've heard from politicians and other leaders in many of the countries of the West since January indicates that there's an enormous PRC influence in the West. There's a 5th column here. How big it is remains to be seen. So, yeah, China is, well, actually, I was going to say that China is going to get hammered, But then I remembered, Grace's Law, that if Grace's Law, obtains here, then we get the opposite response to what we'd expect. That we're told, oh no, we must move even closer to China to prevent things like COVID-19 ever happening again. The Washington Times reports that Missouri, the state of Missouri, has sued the Chinese Communist Party for billions of dollars in coronavirus costs. Attorney General Eric Schmidt said China hid details of the outbreak, hoarded medical supplies, and may even have allowed the virus to escape from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, a possibility the Washington Times raised in January and which has recently gained ground as the U.S. government investigates. At the very least, the Chinese government and its ruling Communist Party should have known that research on such a dangerous virus was a recipe for disaster, given previous findings of safety concerns at the Wuhan lab. I don't really think that safety concerns are much of a concern in China. Oh, let's talk about me, or let's talk about Iris Zhao. Because, it's obvious that the minorities, they are really getting the worst out of this pandemic. This is from ABC News. Coronavirus has sparked racist attacks on Asians in Australia, including me. I was standing in a supermarket aisle and moving my shopping trolley to make room for a middle-aged woman to pass when I overheard it. Asians, stay home, stop spreading the virus. I stopped and looked at the woman. Her face was serious. Her eyes stared blankly at the floor in front of her as if she was just thinking aloud. Wow, devastating. Devastating experience. 10,000 confirmed cases and more than 200 deaths. 200 deaths in the whole country of Australia. And of course, it has to be put under lockdown. But if that isn't enough, a new problem is emerging. More and more people are reporting racist comments and abuse from those who believe that because the virus originated in China, anyone with an Asian-looking face is likely to spread the disease. Before this experience, racism was something I knew existed, but I had only experienced via other people's stories. But I am not alone. A Gold Coast surgeon, Ria Liang, tweeted on Thursday that one of her patients joked about not shaking her hand because of the coronavirus. Dr. Liang did not find it funny at all. Instead, she felt offended by racism. Several Chinese Australian friends shared their own experiences when I brought up my supermarket encounter. One recounted how a waiter had dumped change at his table before turning and quickly walking away after my friend paid cash for a meal at a Melbourne restaurant. That is, as far as microaggressions go, that's a microaggression. I'm just, this poor person, I suppose, went home and cried herself or himself to sleep that day. Another, who wore a mask as a precaution at a shopping mall on Friday, had 3 teenagers tell her, "See you, go and catch coronavirus." None of these 3 people have been to China recently, nor have had contact with anyone confirmed or suspected of having the coronavirus. Sydney man S.K. Zhang, who has lived in Australia for the past 20 years, said since news of the epidemic broke, he has been getting stares on public transport and is increasingly worried about how the online vitriol will affect Chinese Australian children. It's been a tough week. We are very fearful, but at the same time, we're also being targeted with racism and a lot of unwanted attention. The way I would put it is right after 9/11, people looked at every Muslim as if they were terrorists, and that's how people are looking at us. He said he wears a face mask for his own protection and could sense tension when he stepped on the bus or train. Nobody has verbally abused me or anything, but I can feel the unwelcome stares coming from these people. Devastating, absolutely devastating. Oh, Chris Cuomo. Thank God Chris Cuomo is okay. But apparently, according to the Mail, he's being ridiculed for staging a reunion with his family after several weeks locked in his basement 9 days after he left his Hamptons mansion and had a row with a loser fat biker. Yeah, it's a curious question that, Chris Cuomo, or Fredo, as we call him, he was locked down, right? Isolated. And yet he got into a war of words with a so-called loser fat biker because he was out in public with his wife, his children, and some other woman, perhaps a nanny. Why was he doing that? That's not in the rules. That's not supposed to be allowed. Yes, and there's pictures here of, yes, tearful reunion. Yes, the biker, identified only as David, claimed Cuomo stormed over and asked, "Who the hell are you? I can do what I want." He just ranted, screaming, "I'll find out who you are," David said. He then reported Cuomo to East Hampton's police. "I said to him, your brother, Andrew Cuomo, is the coronavirus czar, and you're not even following his rules, unnecessary travel," David told the New York Post in an interview last week. "I hate bullies," he added. And there's a bunch of tweets here mocking Fredo. One from Pat Nepley. "Oh, please, he's out riding his bike. He's hardly locked like a prisoner down in his basement. Such a staged emergence." Jerry Dunleavy writes, "What sort of gaslighting is this? Chris Cuomo didn't just emerge from a basement quarantine. I mean, the guy got in a well-publicized fight with a biker outside of his second home in the Hamptons on Easter. This is pretty shameless stuff by CNN. Someone called DJ Locke, well, pushes the boat out. There's legit evidence that Fredo never quarantined. Leave it to CNN to always put on a show. Not a very good show, but a show nonetheless." So this guy, he travels to his second home when there's supposed to be a lockdown. I mean, personally, I don't care, but he was the face. He was the face of the lockdown. The Federalist, Chris Cuomo recovered from COVID, stages weird official emergence from basement after admitting he left his house on Easter. First and foremost, writes Emily Jashinsky, praise God, Cuomo recovered from the virus. His infected wife seems to be healing, and the couple is with their children. But Cuomo himself was first to mention the trip he took outside his home on Easter Sunday. Yes, and there's another, let's say, coronavirus let's say scamp, yes, who more famous than Chris Cuomo, even, who'll be getting to shortly. Oh, yes, some people are enjoying the economic collapse, and one of them is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. According to Breitbart on Monday, she deleted a message in which she appeared to cheer a historic drop in oil prices and an opportunity to invest in green infrastructure to save our planet. So, yeah, she said she was responding to this tweet, oil prices now at negative values, meaning oil producers have to pay people to take it off their hands and store it. She responded, this snapshot is being acknowledged as a turning point in the climate movement. Fossil fuels are in long-term structural decline. This, along with low interest rates, means it's the right time to create millions of jobs transitioning to renewable and clean energy. And she was responding to another one. She said, you absolutely love to see it. This is the collapse of oil prices and to negative values. This, along with the record low interest rates, means it's the right time for a worker-led mass investment in green infrastructure to save our planet. Yes, she typed cough there because yeah, and then she deleted it. Yeah, I don't know what is going to power the earth. The unicorn droppings, is that the plan? Because it's not going to be so-called green energy. Oh, I talked about Ellen DeGeneres yesterday, and there seems to be a serious campaign going on to have her canceled. This is from the Daily Beast. People are finally starting to see the real Ellen DeGeneres, and it isn't pretty. So apparently, Ellen DeGeneres is not in real life as nice as she is on her talk show. That would be unprecedented, yes, I know. But Cassie DaCosta writes, as America's preeminent lesbian daytime talk show host, why does lesbian have to be there? I think she's just the preeminent daytime talk show host. Ellen DeGeneres has attained a somewhat unlikely arena of ubiquity in mainstream entertainment culture. But in the past year, there is evidence emerging that the tinge of mean-spiritedness that comes through in DeGeneres' interviews and segments on the Ellen DeGeneres Show are consistent with a rumored behind-the-scenes demeanor. And now it's not just a give Zed fucks, Dakota Johnson, that's what it says in the story, who's coming through with tales of the daytime media queen. It's the workers. So yes, there have been rumor mills in the comedy and TV worlds about DeGeneres' meanness for years. Late last month, a Twitter thread by comedian and podcast host Kevin T. Porter brought many out with first, second, and third-hand stories about DeGeneres' various transgressions, from refusing to make eye contact with interns to getting a waitress fired for having a chipped nail and more. And none of these stories have been shared or confirmed by anyone still in the industry, but in 2014, former Ellen head writer Karen Kilgariff did share with Mark Maron that she was fired from the show after refusing to cross the picket line during the 2008 writer's strike. That's it? That's the story? Wow. And there's another one. I wasn't looking for these, you understand. They would link to on, other sites that I'd gone to. This is from Yahoo Celebrity. This is what counts as news, people. Nikkietutorials, a Dutch YouTuber who came out as transgender in January, is pulling back the curtain on her experience at the Ellen DeGeneres Show and explaining how it taught her to not meet your idols. The influencer, whose real name is Nikki DeJager, appeared on Ellen DeGeneres' show nearly 1 week after posting the emotional coming out video on her Nikkietutorials YouTube page, where it has over 36 million views as of Monday afternoon. And although she was excited to be invited to DeGeneres' show to discuss the pivotal moment with the host famous for encouraging people to be kind to one another, the 26-year-old revealed that the backstage experience wasn't all she had thought it would be. And there's a large picture of this person. This person has makeup done in order to resemble a sex doll. She looks like an IRL sex doll. How about that? Call me naive, but I expected to be welcomed with confetti cannons. Welcome to the Ellen DeGeneres Show. But instead, I was greeted by an angry intern who was a bit overworked. She said in an interview with the Dutch publication, and see, I was expecting a Disney show, but got Teletubbies after dark. DeJager, who has a combined following of over 27 million people across her social media accounts, went on to say that she felt she was treated far differently than the rest of the show's guests. Every guest at Ellen's had a private toilet, but I didn't. I was not allowed to use the nearest toilet because it was reserved for the Jonas Brothers. Why do they get a private toilet? Okay. So, I'll keep close to that story. Moving back to politics, a story in Yahoo News, how the coronavirus could delay presidential election results by a week or more. This is deeply troubling. Americans have come to expect that they will know who their next president is on election night, but that's likely to change this fall. Is it now? In fact, because of a huge increase in mail-in voting in states that are not used to it, the presidential election could take a week or more to be decided. Public officials and advocates are just now beginning to grapple with how to prepare themselves and the country for this unprecedented situation. It's a culture shift that's going to be required. Yeah, it's part of the new normal, says Vanita Gupta, president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. We should be prepared to wait at least a week before results can be certified. So in other words, there will never be another free and fair election in the United States. And what is perhaps worse, the American people, large portions, up to a half, maybe more, of Americans will not accept the results of presidential election. This is the sort of thing that leads to violent protest and perhaps even insurrection. Oh, you may have heard that Land O'Lakes Butter removed the pretty Indian maiden from their packaging because it was racist. It's 2020, and this product has been around for God knows how many decades, and now it's decided that this is intolerable. But Allie Fenwick at Queen's University has provided us with a handy list of these 5 racist food brands still stock our shelves. Aunt Jemima's Pancakes. Aunt Jemima, well, the black woman on the box doesn't look like the black woman on the box when I was growing up. It was a 19th century black woman, mammy, you could say. I don't know what could possibly be offensive about this woman on the Aunt Jemima box. Yes, black women, it made black women look like they were content with being slaves. Again, the woman on the Aunt Jemima box does not look like a slave. Uncle Ben's rice. Uncle was a pejorative term used in the 19th and early 20th centuries to describe a black person who was subservient to white authority figures. An older version of the picture on the packaging shows a black man wearing a bow tie dressed as a servant. Today, Uncle Ben wears a collared shirt instead. Does that change of image erase the brand's racist past? No. Eskimo pie. In Canada, the word Eskimo refers to the Inuit people. In other places like Alaska and Greenland, it also refers to the Yupik people. Because of the word's derogatory use by non-Indigenous peoples over the years, Eskimo is no longer used to refer to Inuit or Yupik people. Derogatory use by non-Indigenous people over the years, that's a new one to me. It's not as if I ever heard anyone saying, hey, stop that, you're carrying on like a bunch of Eskimos or something like that. No, cream of wheat. And okay, so the cream of wheat, there's a black man with a chef's hat, and he has a big smile on his face because he's delivering you this delicious food. And that's clearly unacceptable. He was portrayed as a non-threatening, childlike black slave. Need I say more? I'm seeing a man in a chef's hat holding, a plate that has a bowl on it, and it's hot food and presumably delicious. Chiquita Bananas, yeah, well, in 1944, the token image of Chiquita Bananas was a banana dressed in a red dress and high heels carrying fruit on its head. By taking an inanimate object and giving it exaggerated feminine attributes, this image objectifies women and perpetuates the stereotype of the hypersexual Latina. These are just a few examples of how the brands we've grown accustomed to seeing are still complicit in perpetuating racist stereotypes. Even though many of them have altered the original face of the brand, it's clear that we still have ways to go, or a way to go, I think is what she meant, or perhaps far to go. Presumably she's not studying English at Queen's University. Mark Zuckerberg, completely out of control. He's a public menace. According to U.S. News, he said on Monday that protests against stay-at-home orders organized on the social site qualify as harmful misinformation and are removed from the platform. No, they're not harmful misinformation. They are, they're advertising peaceful assembly, which is guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution, and these are based on opinions that the governmental response to the COVID-19 epidemic has been draconian. This is not misinformation. You see the meaning of misinformation, it's changed. Previously, it meant a claim or an opinion that doesn't agree with the dominant narrative. Apparently, now it means any activity which is at odds with the dominant narrative. Good Morning America anchor George Stephanopoulos asked the CEO how the social media giant is handling the fact that Facebook is now being used to organize a lot of these protests to defy social distancing guidelines in the States. The anchor asked Zuckerberg, Stephanopoulos, I again will repeat that Stephanopoulos went to dinner party at Jeffrey Epstein's massive pad in Manhattan after he was convicted of sex crimes. That George Stephanopoulos, yeah. Zuckerberg said that if something states that social distancing isn't effective to slow the spread of the coronavirus, it is deemed misinformation and taken down. He added, however, it is important that people can continue to debate policies and give their opinions, but there is a line on this. More than normal political discourse No, that's just what it is. It's political discourse. I think that a lot of the stuff that people are saying that is false around a health emergency like this can be classified as harmful misinformation that is a risk of leading to imminent physical danger, and we'll take that kind of content down. Well, when is Mark Zuckerberg going to be taken down? Yahoo Life, TechCrunch. Facebook has already come under fire, okay, citation needed, for hosting groups organizing anti-quarantine protests in response to the government lockdowns amid the coronavirus outbreak, and those promoting fake coronavirus cures and misinformation. Now it's trying to figure out what to do with the growing number of COVID-19 community groups on its platform worldwide. Yeah. In their English portion of the event that ran today, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, as is typical, positioned Facebook as a force for good. However, Facebook groups have also contributed to the spread of misinformation despite Facebook's efforts to keep this content off its platform. How did Mark Zuckerberg become the dictator of truth? Oh, yes, and it appears that he's been economical with the actuality. According to Breitbart, Joel Pollack, governors have denied reports that they instructed Facebook to remove pages promoting protests against strict stay-at-home orders, saying that the company reached out to them, not the other way around. And this from the statement from the governor of Nebraska and statement from the governor of New Jersey. Yeah. And Alan Bukhari, who's the editorial editor of the New York Post, he writes, is Mark Zuckerberg's God complex getting worse? Every day seems to bring a new mind-boggling act of overreach from Facebook. This week, the company seemingly decided that the U.S. Constitution doesn't matter as it decided to suppress unlawful protests against coronavirus lockdowns. Unlawful protests? Perhaps it's been a while since Zuckerberg read it, but I think I remember something about a right of citizens to assemble peaceably in the First Amendment. Earlier in the month, Facebook decided that the president of Brazil, Jair Bolsonaro, wasn't saying the right things about the Chinese virus pandemic and removed several of the head of state's posts. Facebook insists that it will transmit official information about the virus to its users. It's just that some officials are too populist, you see. Perhaps we shouldn't be surprised. This is, after all, a company that believes it is so important it should have its own Supreme Court. It's also a company whose CEO is happy to act as the world's editor-in-chief, deciding what news stories are of sufficient importance to be heard on the platform. And then it talks about how Facebook suppressed information about the whistleblower, who I won't name on this platform because the show will be taken down. If I do, we'll just call him Bagpipe. Being the world's editor-in-chief isn't enough for Mark Zuckerberg, though. In the age of Wuhan coronavirus pandemic, he set himself up as the world's chief medical officer as well, deciding what information and misinformation about the pandemic gets through to Facebook users. And we already see the result of allowing one progressive-dominated company to have that level of power. When Bolsonaro expresses skepticism about social distancing, his posts get deleted. But when the mainstream media repeatedly spreads misinformation and fake news about the virus, they don't even get fact-checked. With great power comes great responsibility, and Facebook appears to have none of the latter. It's time for America's leaders to take seriously the danger of having this out-of-control company in charge of the global flow of information at this dangerous point in our history. And the Daily Mail has a story about the tennis star Novak Djokovic. His pretty wife, Yelena, has been criticized for sharing information on 5G. A post by her on April 1st has been tabbed up as false information by Instagram. The video was of an American physician linking 5G to the coronavirus pandemic. Oh, yes, and so this, when you go to Instagram, and there's a picture of what this looks like on a phone, that you get a blurred image and then a box with a strike through it, false information reviewed by independent fact checkers. Yes, Facebook isn't going to let anyone say anything. I don't think that 5G towers spread the coronavirus, but some people seem to believe it, and I can't see why they shouldn't be allowed to speak this. Oh, but look, because they'll burn down the cell towers. No, not necessarily. If we want to use that standard, all political speech would be outlawed. So what's happening in my country of Canada? We're up to 38,413 cases, 1,834 deaths in a country of 38 million. My province, oh, let's look at Saskatchewan. Ooh, they're up to 320 confirmed cases and 4 deaths. And the province of 1.1 million people is locked down. Again, 320 cases, 4 deaths. In BC, 1,724 cases, 87 deaths. And the latest from Vancouver Island, where we are locked down, and I am living in a hotel that is about 10% capacity or less. BC health officials announced one more COVID-19 death, 25 new cases. One more, okay? There's no indication when the lockdown in British Columbia is going to end. BC hasn't recorded more than 50 new cases of the virus in a single day since April the 3rd. So it would appear that the curve has been very much flattened here. We have how about the island? 109 confirmed cases and 2 deaths. Vancouver Island, and of course, got to be locked down. And, okay. Yeah, this is a really typically Canadian story. Broken links at home and abroad emerged in Canada's crucial food and medical supply chain on Tuesday, tempering discussions by health officials about potentially easing the restrictions to combat COVID-19. Now, this is, okay. Canada was going to get all this stuff from China, okay, because it's China, and if you can't trust China, who can you trust? And a day after some initial confusion, Justin Trudeau confirmed Tuesday that 2 Canadian planes left China on Monday without the protective medical equipment that they had been sent to pick up. One of the planes was a federal charter and the other was destined for a particular province, Trudeau said Tuesday. Trudeau said there are limits to how long an aircraft is permitted to park on the ground in China. Supply lines and truck shipments to the airports are difficult and interrupted by checkpoints and quarantine measures. For the most part, we've been able to navigate through those and ensure that Canada has received the equipment that it needs. But these 2 planes were forced to take off empty. So, oh, yeah, Canada, you're not getting this for your planes. You know, another country would be very, very angry with China for pulling a stunt like this. You know, another country might, let's say, call its ambassador home for consultation, that sort of thing. So, what's happened to Australia? Again, the country's locked down. COVID-19 has really had not much of an effect. An incredible story from Malcolm Turnbull, the former Australian Prime Minister. This is from the National Post. He has accused Justin Trudeau of humiliating other world leaders during negotiations for a revamped Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal in 2017. In a just published autobiography, Turnbull said he personally felt let down by Trudeau and upbraided him for embarrassing other world leaders when he failed to show up for a critical meeting. Turnbull said he was scheduled by coincidence to meet with Trudeau after the no-show, and the Canadian Prime Minister seemed more interested in talking about his socks than the previous meeting. Justin always wore perfectly tailored suits that fitted like a glove, bright socks, and on this occasion, 2-tone shoes, Turnbull wrote. What do you think of the socks? He asked, crossing his legs as he sat down. Justin, I said, we're not here to talk about your socks. Now, okay, so Justin Trudeau is a child, okay, but what sort of a man could possibly be embarrassed by Justin Trudeau? That would be like being embarrassed by a cat. Again, what's happened to the Aussies? Now, it turns out that scofflaw, that was the word that I was searching for earlier, that another famous coronavirus lockdown scofflaw is none other then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Spencer Fernando writes in the Post-Millennial, one of the main things democracy is designed to avoid is the idea that we don't have rulers. Instead, we have public servants. Unfortunately, many politicians, including Justin Trudeau, prefer to act like rulers and believe that the rules they impose on others shouldn't apply to themselves. And Justin Trudeau's visit to the Harrington Lake Cottage is an example of that arrogant, elitist attitude. Trudeau and Theresa Tam both have said that people shouldn't be traveling to cottages and family visits. They said to stop any non-essential travels. In fact, regular Canadians are being ticketed, fined, and punished for trying to go to cottages and for violating social distancing. For example, an Oakville family was hit with an $880 ticket for going rollerblading together. And Anthony Fury of the Toronto Sun wrote that Canadians are being stopped by the police for doing exactly what Trudeau did over the weekend. To clear up any confusion, not only did Trudeau's Harrington Lake visit clearly break the spirit of the rules around cottage visits, it actually broke the law. Quebec's newly passed ministerial order, named 2020-13, banning access to the Outaouais region, to be precise. In good news, illegal immigration in Canada is near zero. It's because the government finally decided to police the border. And I mentioned the mass shooter in Nova Scotia who was killed. He killed over 20 people. We've been told by Justin Trudeau and others that we are not to name this person. His name is Gabriel Wortman. And there was a sensible piece in the Globe and Mail by Robin Urbach about this, about the dangers of this. For every mass shooting or act of violence, one group or another will try to hijack the perpetrator's supposed cause to make a point. The media's job is to sift through the noise to find the facts, which involves investigating and reporting on the perpetrator, the real one, identified by name, to avoid creating a vacuum for fake news such as imagined second shooters. Media reports that refer only or nearly exclusively to the perpetrator will invite rabid speculation on what else mainstream news is not reporting, yielding space to fringe websites eager to connect the killer's name to their pet obsession. So finally, I'm going to talk about Better Call Saul, which ended its 5th season last night. And it was kind of a shocker, you know? Of course, you know, if you don't want spoilers, you can just stop listening to the program at this time, because this is my final subject. The episode was called Something Unforgivable. So what might that be? Well, it turns out that Kim Wexler, who had seemed a quite likable person in many respects, actually has a massive chip on her shoulder and is planning something monstrous, something unforgivable against poor Howard Hamlin. She doesn't like Howard Hamlin, I guess because, you know, he was born into a prominent legal family, took over his father's business, you know, not from some gritty single mom world like Kim comes from. Kim walked away from a very good job with Rich Schweikert, who she also treated quite badly. And now she wants to help the worthy poor people, to give them pro bono, the kind of lawyering that, you know, the rich people get. Well, you know, Alan Dershowitz has pointed out that, you know, like about 98% of the people who are charged with crimes in the United States, I mean, they're clearly guilty from the start. I would imagine that being a public defender would be a very depressing job, because you have stupid people doing bad things over and over again and thinking that they're hard done by. Why are they picking on me? Did you think about that before you beat that cashier into a bloody pulp? And then, you know, there's a stream of excuses that come after that. You know, and again, if you hadn't beaten the cashier to a bloody pulp, you wouldn't be in the position that you're in. Those are the sorts of people that public defenders meet with every day. But what was the movie reference? I guess it must have been Raiders of the Lost Ark. The vast room with all of the pending cases, the public defender cases, and the black chief public defender seemed to find Kim's, how would you say, naivete rather amusing. That she thinks that she's going to make a difference, you know. And how's she going to pull this off? Well, she's going to force a resolution to that old case right at the beginning when Jimmy McGill was making his bones as a lawyer. The old people in the homes having their Social Security checks swallowed up by this company. Still not resolved, but when it is resolved, Kim and Jimmy, aka Saul Goodman, are in for what, a $2 million settlement? Now, yeah, the tables were turned in last night's episode. That obviously Jimmy has a chip on his shoulder. You know, his brother was the successful one. His brother was the one that everyone looked up to, and his brother certainly looked down on him. And Howard Hamlin intervenes to tell Kim that he had offered Jimmy, aka Saul, a job at his firm. And it was quite a genuine offer, and he seemed to be quite enthused about the prospect of hardworking, Jimmy Hustle, working for his company. And Jimmy kept putting him off and putting him off and putting him off. And then he destroyed his car with bowling balls, and then hired 2 hookers to show up at a lunch date and to contrive a little scene where he was accused of ripping off 2, street hookers, which is, I suppose you could say that this was childish and destructive behavior. But what Kim wants is far worse than that, and she succeeded in actually scaring Jimmy last night. The talk, for the whole season is Kim going to get killed? Yep, looks like Kim is going to get killed. Something horrible is going to happen to her. But now it appears that she is the person who is going to be doling out the horror from now on. Fine work from Rhea Seehorn, as usual. And again, very fine work from Tony Dalton as Lalo Salamanca. If it weren't for the drug dealing and the murdering, he'd be a pretty nice guy. Likes to have fun, likes to laugh, likes vintage cars. He loves his people. I don't know, he seems to have a pretty good life down there in Chihuahua, To what extent that's dependent upon him bringing in the drug money north of the border, I don't know. Maybe he just likes a challenge. He effectively kidnapped Nacho Varga, took him down to Chihuahua in order to have a meeting with Don Eladio, played by the Canadian actor Stephen Bauer. And Don Eladio seemed to be quite impressed with him because he shows, ambition, But, of course, Gus Fring had decided that he had to be taken out, that Lalo had to be taken out. And there was quite an exciting action scene where Nacho lets them in, creates a diversion, very cleverly, I must say. Creates a diversion and shows you a way how to open a lock. And apparently this is a real thing, what he did. So the killers come in, the professional killers, and Lalo Salamanca is a quick-witted fellow. He's also brave as well. And he has a really exceptional tunnel underneath his house, which leads to beyond the fence. And that was all very exciting. But again, it was a very disturbing episode, because I suppose that, some of us were kind of falling in love with Kim Wexler because, of her womanly charms. She has this quality of Des Aviga vibe about her. And her loyalty to Jimmy McGill has been quite inspiring. But now one gets the impression that her loyalty to him was based not so much on her liking of him or love of him, but because of his usefulness in creating mayhem and doing bad things, doing grossly immoral things. There's one more season of Better Call Saul left. Of course, Hollywood's been shut down, so God knows when we will get to see it. Of course, there have been big gaps in between seasons of Better Call Saul before. I had said a few months ago that, we got to get to Omaha, Nebraska, because we've been teased with what's happening to Jimmy in Omaha, and the fact that he has been found out and he may be in danger. And I just hope they don't leave it too long. Anyway, I'm going to take a final look at the chat. Ashley Bravo says, I was feeling low down and blue. I didn't know what in the world I was going to do. Coronavirus was coming around. It was all over the air, all over the ground. It wouldn't give me no peace. Franz says, I felt it was a little underwhelming for a season finale. Expected more fireworks. Well, I'd like to be surprised in that way. I mean, I think it was the emotional highlights that were the star of the show. Lalo is going to go full Terminator mode now. Walrus Libertarian says KMG needs to review Naruto next. I don't know what that is, but I will remember it and I will look it up. Le Comte de Boras says this is why media never attacked Justin the Pretty on the blackface thing, because he is a racist. I don't know. On the one hand, the media is besotted with Trudeau. I mentioned in my video article on the election this psychosexual hysteria surrounding him, both from women and men. And I think that they understand that he is a child playing dress up, princess rock star, as I call him. But they feel a need to protect him. Metal Mike says, I'm not sure any of the characters are particularly likable. Well, that is a serious problem. It really is. I guess there's still Howard Hamlin. Ashley Bravo says, why are a bunch of celebrities coming together for a concert called One World in order to raise funds for the World Health Organization? Because they're for the same reason that they all are members of PETA. Because if one person does something in Hollywood, then everyone has to do it. They don't want to be left out. So that's the show for today. I want to thank you all for watching or listening. If you'd like to show any part of it, I would appreciate it if you'd press the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. If you would like to support the show, my PayPal account is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. I'll be back on the air at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. And I leave you with my traditional benediction that in these days of total atomization, that you do manage to find some genuine human contact. Good night.